is Dr. Joseph Burkes, and you are listening to Epic Voyages. I'm your guest host tonight, and I've been an internal medicine physician for 40 years. Now I'm mostly retired. I live in California with my wife, Yael, and we have 3 dogs, a 106-year-old desert tortoise by the name of Moishe, or Moses in English. And since the 1990s, I've been involved with the UFO phenomena. For 5 years, back in the 1990s, I was a volunteer team leader for what has been called the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Initiative. That's a human-empowered contact effort that is now spread over all the world. Over the years, I've worked with a number of UFO groups, including Dr. Greer's Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, that's CSETI, the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, and a network of Peruvian contactees that are now called RAMA. My guests tonight are very special for me because this is going to be the first time I can interview a wife-husband team of contact activists. Kosta Makreas is the founder of ET Let's Talk, the People's Disclosure Movement, and the Global CE-5 Initiative. Hollis Polk is a clairvoyant and personal coach. She teaches the ET Let's Talk community how to develop their psychic abilities in order to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence. But before I introduce our guests and put them on the air, I'd like to take care of just a little bit of housework. The Epic Voyages is part of the Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council, EPIC. You can get all your up-to-date information about Epic Voyages projects, and you can view our upcoming radio shows by checking out the Facebook page as well as the epicvoyages.com. You can always catch us live every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. I should say 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific by going to inceptionradionetwork.com. INR, Inception Radio Network, provides you with opportunities to tune in that are several in nature. This includes listening to us on your television set via Roku TV's set-top media player. You can download the IRN app on your Android, iPhone, BlackBerry, and Amazon smartphone, or through their syndicating streaming partners like TuneIn, iTunes, Google Play Music. This show is also available on your car stereo via Stitcher Radio's vehicle dashboard app. Lastly, even if your power goes out, you can listen to us through an old-fashioned tethered phone line by dialing 401-267-8300. That's 401-267-8300. This show is rebroadcast every Friday night on Dark Matter Digital Network at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you absolutely can't catch us on the air, don't worry. You can catch this show as well as hundreds of past Epic shows by visiting irnshows.com. We invite you to join our conversation through IRN's interactive chat room at irnchat.com. You can always get your questions and comments to us by Skyping Inception Radio Network or dialing in to 888-919-2355. That's 888-919-BELL. So with that taken care of, let me tell you about our guests in some further detail. Hollis Polk is a clairvoyant and personal coach. Hollis has a bachelor's degree in engineering from Princeton and a Harvard MBA, Master's of Business Administration. She is also a master practitioner of what is called neurolinguistics. We'll be learning about that later on, and a certified hypnotherapist. She describes her work as helping people create lives they love by blending neurolinguistic and hypnotherapy techniques, decision science, clairvoyance, and the common sense she's learned in over 30 years of business experience. She is also a successful business owner. She teaches classes in intuition development and offers one-on-one personal and professional coaching. Her husband, also with us tonight, is Kosta Makreas, the founder of etletstalk.com, also the People's Disclosure Movement and the Global CE-5 Initiative. He was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1953, In 97, he earned a BA in computer science from Indiana University. He's worked as a software consultant in Silicon Valley for almost 4 decades. But most importantly, Costa has been a dedicated spiritual activist since his early teenage years. As a young man, Costa became fascinated with the mysteries of the universe, teaching himself not only astrology, meditation, astronomy, but also reading widely on extraterrestrials, UFOs, comparative religion, science fiction, spirituality, Atlantis, and other metaphysical topics. His current passion and mission is the website etletstalk.com and the ET Let's Talk community that has over 11,000 members in more than 100 countries. At etletstalk.com, he teaches members how to successfully communicate with what he describes as loving ET spiritual intelligences. At ET Let's Talk, members can also discover other contact activists on the global community map. Costa is creating and nurturing what he sees as a global citizens movement that is contacting many benevolent star civilizations currently visiting the Earth. This network seeks to empower individuals and groups to interact with these ET beings and co-create with them a positive planetary transformation, a new Earth of peace, free energy, abundance, and justice. Costa believes that we are living in a unique, challenging, and wonderful point in history as we transition to a new mode of enlightened and spiritual living where planetary peace reigns between humanity and all forms of life on and off our planet Earth. Okay, so let's start with a discussion of the dramatic contact events that you experienced that propelled you into participation in the network of activists that I like to call the Contact Underground. Good evening. Hollis, Costa, are you on the line?
Yep,
Yes, I
we're
am.
here.
Pleasure
Oh,
to be here, Joe.
oh, great.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, Costa, I've read your bio, and I'd like to hear just how you got started in terms of your training and those exciting initial contact experiences. That started in 2006, is that right?
Yes, 2006 was a turning point year for me in my life, changed the course of my life and put me on the path to etletstalk.com. Just a tiny bit of background, I had an interest, as you mentioned in my bio, a deep interest in many topics, UFOs being one of them. So I read whatever I could in Indiana back in the early 60s, in those years where information was not quite as widespread and prolific as it is today on the internet. But it still stoked my imagination and got me to look up at the skies. And so as a result, decades later, in 2006, I discovered the Disclosure Project and was amazed that people were actually going out under the stars and making this kind of contact using visualization, meditation, remote viewing, techniques like that. And I decided that this was for me. So I spent a week at Mount Shasta with, I think it was about 40 other people, going out night after night, looking at the skies and learning how to distinguish what is terrestrial and what is potentially extraterrestrial, and was having a lot of eye-opening experiences that were just exciting me with kind of heart-pumping type of excitement, so that it just kept getting better every night. And I knew that I was really onto something and wanted to keep doing this. But
Tell me about the highlight of your week. It was up in Mount Shasta, you said, right?
yeah, that's in Northern California, very beautiful and spiritually magnetic mountain, according to many traditions. But the one event that was a turning point for me was one night into the week, maybe it was the third or fourth night, I don't remember. We were out for 6 nights. After our group, which was situated at the foot of the mountain in a clearing of woods, surrounded by woods, our group had finished their meditation. It was late, and most of the people got into their cars and headed back into town to conclude the evening. I would guess about 10 of us stayed after in this clearing area, still talking, and someone tugged on my sleeve, and I looked over, and I would say about 8 feet away from where I was standing there, I noticed something different in the air and was rubbing my eyes, making sure it wasn't the foliage, tricks of the shadow or the little bit of moonlight that there was, because the moon was setting, if I recall. Just trying to make sure that I was seeing what I was seeing. But what happened really that came on was what turned out to be a semi-materialized sphere that I guessed was about 6 feet across, and again about 8 feet from me, just very close. Everyone was looking at it and talking in hushed tones. And though it never became solid in the way that, say, the trees around it were, it was there. It was opaque, couldn't see into it. It floated above the ground noiselessly. There was no wind, and there was no other phenomenon there that we could point to, but there didn't have to be. You could see it visually. It was there, and myself and about 9 other people saw it. We were stone sober, alert, cold. It was probably 60 degrees, so we were.
Were you frightened?
No, not at all. I was amazed, and I realized something special is happening. For half an hour, it stayed there, and there were various things that went on during that time. Surprisingly, though there were cameras, nobody, I didn't have one, but there were digital cameras that people had. There was before the iPhone and other smartphones had good cameras, but nobody took a picture, and yet we all saw it. We were whispering. Because of the different perceptions of the varying people there, we got different reports about it. And what I mean by that is one person announced to us, hey, I just got a telepathic message from the occupants of this thing. And it was very clear. They told me that they are scientists and that they're here on Earth in a research mode, checking out the human energy systems, researching the human energy system, things that we know as our energy fields, our auras. So that was kind of cool.
Did anyone else have the same message that you could confirm that it was maybe something more than individual imagination?
That's a good question. I don't recall that anybody else did. That may have happened because people were grouped and murmuring low between themselves. So there were other conversations going on, and for all I know, other people were hearing something but maybe not telling the entire group. So no, I can't verify that, but I heard the one person. Additionally, though, what happened, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just curious, did anyone have the bright idea to try to merge with the sphere or climb into it, sort of thing?
Nobody did. I thought of approaching it and then kind of pulled back. We later found out that a couple members, after it dematerialized, after half an hour, a couple of our group at night had sunburn on their face. So the kind of energy that it was radiating had a physical effect on them. It wasn't hurtful, and none of the rest of us were hurt in any way or experienced, well, except for not hurt, but there was one other experience, and I can go into that in a little bit more detail if you want.
I do, but first I want to add that I've been sunburned at night in the presence of UFOs as well. Back in it was 1993, I had a 2.5-hour encounter with what I call jumpers. They were small points of light that were taking small jumps in the sky. This was November 1993. It was in the high desert Joshua Tree, and one of the objects came in low, and it got to about a mile or less from us, and we could see through binoculars that it was, at least it had a visual display of a disc, and it was glowing like a fluorescent sign or light. And we did get sunburned at night, myself and my coworker. And what was curious was that this object came in on the right. There was several others that we were spending most of our time looking at, but this thing came in on the right, and it was putting out some kind of radiation. I presume some form of ultraviolet, because you don't usually get sunburn from a UFO from the light that you see. And so my right side of my face and my coworkers was redder than the other side. Not so dramatic as, say, the actor Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, who gets a sharp mark at his nose and one side is brilliant red and the other. But this has happened. It's part of the literature,
Hmm.
and it's part of my contact experience as well.
That's amazing. And it's nice to get corroboration from you and others about common experiences like that. It helps validate the fact that this is not a terrestrial phenomenon, not something that's in our normal range of experience, right?
Hmm.
Um, but really, to conclude, the most, for me, dramatic event of all this, as if the fact it just floated there for half an hour wasn't enough. There was a woman whom I'll call Gloria, um, standing next to me, a friend that I had met there during the week. And oddly, I looked over and she was standing literally next to me, like a foot or two away. She was standing perfectly erect, and she had both of her arms outstretched but bent at right angles, almost as if she was holding them palms up and out. Now, what was amazing was she was very quiet, didn't say anything, but she held them in that position and didn't move for the whole half hour. I was next to her and thought to myself, okay, something weird is going on. I don't know what it is. I don't want to interrupt it if she's having some kind of communication. So I hesitated to intervene in any way, but I stayed alert watching her just in case there was some kind of distress that happened. Then I would, take whatever action was appropriate and help her. But that didn't happen. It turned out that after the half hour, she actually did finally just kind of shake a little bit, and her arms came down, and I could tell she was disoriented. And I was asking her questions and saying, hey, Gloria, are you okay, whatever. And she seemed to be okay, but again, disoriented. And, I may have held onto her shoulders or whatever, thinking, maybe she'll fall over. But she didn't. So whatever that experience was, it was over for her at that moment. It turns out that she told me a little bit that night, but later on in our group sharing the following afternoon, when we were all in a circle and telling our experiences, she shared with the entire group what had happened. And in short, what had happened was that apparently one of the occupants from this small starcraft telepathically approached her. Now, Gloria was very psychic, so it was probably easy for them to telepathize with her. What this individual said was, I would like to merge with you and study your energy system with your permission.
The beings on the craft said that to Gloria. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right. A being, right. And I guess you ask for validation if other people heard things in their head that the one message we got was heard. And in a sense, she validated what this person initially told us at the beginning of this encounter, which is, hey, hi, everyone. We're scientists from another planet, which I don't recall that they named, and we're here to do research. Well, here was Gloria telling me someone approached me to do research. And as she told the story to the group, this is how it unfolded. She was asked, may I merge with you and study your system? And she agreed and gave this being 3 conditions. The first one was, or I don't know if it was the first one, but not in any order, but one of the first condition I'm going to mention was, well, you leave when I ask you to leave. You unmerge when I'm done. No question, don't even question it. And number 2, I'm allowed to stay reasonably conscious of what's going on. I just don't want to be knocked out with no memory or no ongoing awareness of my surroundings and what's happening to me. And the third condition was no funny sex stuff. You don't play around with the equipment there, okay? And the being said, that's fine.
This is quite remarkable, Costa, because I suspect that many people in the listening audience have never heard of this kind of interaction between, in a collaborative or certainly cooperative fashion, between an ET intelligence, a being, and a human. And we are faced on this planet with a phenomena that has many mysteries. A lot of people have already decided that they know what contact is about, and it's bad, it's evil, it's abduction, it's experiments and pain, and even torture has the word that's been thrown around. Here we have a collaborative encounter between a human who had the presence of mind, this woman that you call Gloria, to spell out very specific conditions of the kind of encounter that she wants. It's more than just an encounter. It's a kind of communion experience. So I just wanted to underline the very special, unique nature of what we're hearing tonight. And so please go on.
Yeah, and I to validate that, I think that is spot on what you're saying. It's important that these positive kinds of experiences, receive the kind of publicity that they deserve. So thank you for allowing me to tell this to your audience. So what happened was at the end of that half hour, apparently she had decided, you need to leave now. And so the being disengaged. And I watched this opaque kind of grayish surface sphere just slightly dissolve, like you would see a slow dissolve in a movie, not fast or dramatic, but just slowly just then fade into the background, and it was gone. And everybody else around me noticed that too, and we all agreed it was gone. The night was over. We started talking about it, and that was that. And Gloria was okay. So that was the extent of, from my point of view, what had happened. This was the most, I'll tell you, Dr. Joe, the most validating thing. I had not only had seen with my own eyes something that I truly believe and know to this day was not of this earth, but I was in the company of rational, warm-blooded other people that I knew and trusted who saw the same thing. So unless we were all undergoing mass visual hypnosis en masse, then I don't know how else to explain it.
So you're telling me that it wasn't swamp gas or the planet Venus or the California Air National Guard on maneuvers. Is that what you're saying?
No, not this time. Maybe they pulled that off really well other times.
I'd like to just point out that for the regular listeners to this show, you may recall that several months ago I had Mr. Mark Sims on Epic Voyages, and he had not the same, but something somewhat similar in that he asked an extraterrestrial being called Tejbar to merge with him. He agreed to let it happen. And so as strange as it may seem, this is happening on an ongoing basis, not just one person, 2006 in Mount Shasta, but all over the planet. And for every report that we receive, there may be 50 or 100 people who have not come forward to tell their story. So I suspect this is happening on an ongoing basis. Well, that's absolutely amazing. Now, let's turn to Hollis, because I know that from our conversation yesterday and then in the past as well, you told me that you, although had a background in psychic phenomena, were not necessarily gung-ho on this idea of contacting ET. How did you get involved, Hollis?
Well, let me start by saying that I was totally uninterested. In fact, despite having been completely fascinated with the space program as a child, and in fact, that probably led to my becoming an engineer indirectly, I was completely uninterested. Like ETs, yeah, they're probably real, because it never made sense to me that we were alone in the universe as sentient beings.
You had this impression from childhood, I suspect.
Yes. But it just never made sense that we were alone. But I genuinely didn't think that, we would ever have contact with any other beings. That never crossed my mind. So when Costa said he wanted to go to Mount Shasta and do this, I was like, go, have a good time. I'm not coming. This isn't real for me. No, really, this isn't real for me. I'm not interested, but go, enjoy yourself. So what happened was every morning he was so excited, and he would call me every morning at, like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning when I'm having my coffee, and tell me all the thrilling things that had happened the night before. They were exciting.
Wait a second. So he's staying up to 2 in the morning or 3 or 4, and then he's calling you at 6:30 to make sure you get the report. He's checking up on you. Okay, I see.
No. He was genuinely really excited and just wanted to share it with me. It was like, ooh, you got to hear this. Yes. So every night he told me all this, cool stuff that was happening, stuff they saw in the sky. And, then he told me about this thing. So I don't remember which night, probably the fourth or the fifth night. Definitely wasn't the last night. I was sitting in bed reading, 10 o'clock at night. And okay, now I'm tired, and I close up the book. I put it on the nightstand. I turn out the light. And as I turn around, like to kind of scooch down, under the blankets, there are these little beings standing around the foot of the bed, looking at me.
You say little beings?
Yeah.
How tall were they?
3.5 to 4 feet tall. I mean, if everybody had a video, I would hold out my hand and show you how tall they were. I could definitely see their head, their neck, their shoulders, and part of their chest above the foot of the bed. And my bed's kind of a little higher than a normal bed, but not much. So, so they're standing around the foot of the bed looking at me. They had slightly large heads, seemed like slightly narrower arms than we would have. Like, I'm just talking about proportions. They were white, and, I don't know that they were necessarily translucent, but they were not solid. They were definitely not solid, and I could not see features on their faces. I could just see kind of their outlines. So
it sounds like it was maybe Casper the Ghost or something, right?
In retrospect, a little bit like that. More distinct, right? Because they actually had arms, and I suspect they had real, legs and feet, but I couldn't see them at the foot of the bed. They were narrower than Casper was. Like Casper kind of came down like a sheet below his arms, and this wasn't like that. They had an actual torso that came in. So, more defined than Casper. But if I were describing it, to somebody, that would actually be the closest thing that you would have seen if you'd ever watched a Casper cartoon. That would be the closest, matchup.
What was your emotional reaction to their presence?
Well, I was shocked. I mean, like I said, it never occurred to me that this could even happen. They were completely loving. Like, I know what love feels like. If you've ever felt love from an animal, a human, anybody, you know what love feels like. And it was completely love coming off them. So there was no way to be afraid. But I was completely shocked to the point where my mind went blank for I don't know how long. But I mean, and that doesn't happen to me. My mind doesn't go blank. And eventually, and as they appeared, or as I saw them, I suspect they were probably there when I had the light on, but I couldn't see them with the light on. And I do need to add, I was not seeing them clairvoyantly. I was seeing them with my eyes.
That's a very important point. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. There was this telepathic message as they were standing there looking at me. Who are you? Very sweet. Who are you? Like, they just want to know. And I think that they followed Costa's thought to me. And I have a friend that the same thing happened to when her husband went up to Mount Shasta without her. We've since become very good friends, and the exact same thing happened to her, except there was way more people going through her place than came to mine. But anyway, I'm pretty sure they followed Costa's thought to me. And anyway, so they wanted to know who I was, and I had no idea what to say to them. Like, if somebody looks at you and says, "Who are you?" who's from another reality, like, what do you even say, right? So I didn't. And eventually I thought, I should ask them something. Like, when the complete shock wore off, I thought I should ask them something. And the only thing I could think to ask them was, where are you from? Not the best question in the world, but where are you from? And again, to back up a little bit, I was so uninterested that I really didn't know the first thing about astronomy. I didn't know the names of planets. I'd heard of Sirius. That was about it. I didn't know anything about planets or stars or nothing. So when I asked them, again, telepathically, where are you from? This word began to form in my mind, and it was auditory. It was very slow. Are Now, the next morning I had to ask Costa what that was. But it is possible that I heard of that as a star and that I knew it. I mean, I had no conscious knowledge of it, but it's possible that, that's the only thing in the whole experience that I could have made up. I didn't consciously make it up, but it is possible. So, and shortly after that, they just kind of melted away. They just disappeared. Mm-hmm. And it was over.
You mentioned that you thought it was possible that you made up the term Arcturus or Arcturus.
Arcturus, yeah.
Arcturus, but think about it. How often do people report seeing little ET-like beings at the foot of their bed? And how often do people have their spouse go off to an intensive 6-day training in order to learn rudimentary psi techniques to co-create with what are presumed ET visitors to have contact experiences with? So the thought that, this is coincidence or your imagination seems very unlikely in my judgment, having been a contact activist and a physician for many, many years. So I just wanted to add that. So you mentioned that another couple had a similar experience, and it seems to fit into a pattern of what I would call definite support. The reason I mention this is that I was a team leader of a contact group, Los Angeles CE-5 initiative team from 1992 until 1998. And one of the major personnel issues that we had to face was spouses that were not supportive of their mates in this contact work. After all, it's pretty strange. I remember my own wife's concern because here I was, 42 years old. We just bought a house and we're renovating it. We had very big bills. I was working sometimes 2 jobs, both in the ER and the clinic, to pay for all our expenses. And my poor wife, when she saw me meditating and going out on mountaintops to try to attract UFOs, I imagine she thought I might abandon our family and leave her destitute and go off to follow some guru and meditate on a mountaintop somewhere. So I know what her fears were. Fortunately, several months into my contact work, she did have a sighting, which changed her attitude somewhat. And with the passage of time, she realized I'm still her Joe Burkes, and I was able to work as a volunteer contact activist and an ER physician at the same time. I managed to do both. But I think this whole topic of spousal support in terms of staging encounters for the spouse that is not actively involved is a pattern that is ongoing. You mentioned there was another couple as well. Can you provide us with some details about that?
Well, I don't know. Costa met somebody online. Costa, you can maybe talk about that? How you met?
Well, yeah, I just a brief background because of the intense positive experience I had that I just described that one night and during the whole week. It changed my life so that I wanted to do more of this. And because I'm used to being an activist and who always wants to help and make things better, I formed a community and kept people in touch via email and social media with each other who had this interest so that we could educate, inspire, and inform each other. Along that way, I met and I continue to meet hundreds of people, thousands of people all over the world. And so this particular couple, the gentleman, who I'll call Bill, was just someone that in the course of my regular networking efforts, talking to people on Facebook and this and that, I met him, got to talking with him, messaging with him. And because he lived nearby our home in this area of California, I even met with him for lunch one day as I was working down in the Silicon Valley. So that's the background of how I met this particular individual, Bill. Hollis?
So Bill decided he wanted to go up to Mount Shasta I think it was the following summer. No, the following summer or the summer after that. I don't really remember. And so we gave him a ride. You know, he lived nearby. Why take an extra car? So we carpooled up there. And while we were there, I later learned every night his wife, who is a really good psychic, was having beings visit her every night, often multiple beings in one night. It was just a common thing. And we all laughed about it, and we're all friends. And
yeah, it was like, hey, it's Grand Central Station. Hollis got a few visitors, but
right.
Bill's wife really got a party there. And
yeah.
And it was validation for us that we're not crazy. This is not just happening to us, but these trusted friends are experiencing the same thing. So it's really a very cool thing when you're able to share these experiences with other human beings that are literally out of this world. And I want to add too that, Dr. Joe, as you talk about the spousal support, how blessed and important that is when you can get it. And when I talk about spousal support, I should extend it and say also that it can be family support. Whoever the significant people in your life are, whether they're coworkers, business partners, romantic partners, friends, whatever, if they matter to you and if what you do matters to them, then of course you want them to be in support of something this significant. So it's not just about spouses, although obviously we know that is one of the most deepest and most intimate kind of relationships between two people. But I am grateful, I'll tell you, to those Arcturians for showing up. I would like to shake their hands right now if they want to come back, because they changed the course of our relationship around this work. I have no qualms that had they not shown up, that Hollis would not have remained supportive of the work, because she could see how it charged me up, and that I was just going to take off and do more of it. And I know I would have had her support. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the conversation, as she's telling me the story about them being around the bed that she just related, she paused, and and my jaw has just hit the floor, because I thought, hey, I'm calling her with a cool lights in the sky story, and here she kind of one-upped me, like, oh yeah, well, they showed up here at our house. and I was blown away and amazed and happy, because the next thing she said was, and I'm paraphrasing.
Next year, no, let me. Next year, I'm coming with you.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that's really wonderful. I can say that on my contact team, we had 3 physicians from our Southern California Permanente Medical Group. So I was blessed in not only having home support, but also colleagues, people that I worked with, joined up with my were part of my contact team. One, they were Dr. I'll call them Dr. Daniel and Dr. Maria. There was a husband and wife team, and they were, I'm using pseudonyms because they're still practicing, and they asked that I not use their real names, although they're very supportive of the work. I first started working with Dr. Daniel. He, like myself, were part of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, which was citizens' diplomatic program between the United States and the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War. And we carried out an educational campaign to alert people about the dangers of the arms race. And so in 1992, when I got really interested in the subject of UFOs, I joined MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And then the following month, I received my first Mutual UFO Network magazine, and they had new members. And I saw that Dr. Daniel had also joined. And he was an internist and family practitioner, and he was a contactee. And he had had a contact experiences as a 12-year-old boy and off Catalina Island, where he had missing time with another child. He was 12 years old for several hours. They'd lost time. And so he had an interest in UFOs. He joined the team. But his wife, Maria, who was an internist and also, I should say, immunologist, She used to be head of our allergy clinic. She was not terribly interested in UFOs. She was somewhat concerned about her husband's great interest in the subject. And she had a broad daylight sighting the first month that our team went out into the field. When her husband went out into the field to attract UFOs, that very same month, while she was driving home, she had a sighting in broad daylight of a glowing metallic disc that was reflecting sunlight, off its hull, and it was hovering over the Santa Monica Mountains at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And she watched it for about a minute and was absolutely certain it was not any conventional craft. Well, I can tell you that her interest in the subject, like yours, went up tremendously. And so Dr. Maria and Dr. Daniel were able to work as a team, husband-wife team, and it was very good. As my friend and colleague, Dr. Daniel, said, it's great for our relationship.
We'll leave that open right there. Okay.
But it's not always so happy. I know of other situations where things did not work out so well. Do you know of any contact activists that suffered as a result of lack of support or fears that from their spouses that they were going off the deep end, that sort of thing?
Yes, I know of at least one divorce.
Well, and you think that was caused by contact work or just contributed? There was other issues.
It definitely contributed. I suspect there were other issues. Not really having ever even met the wife, or now ex-wife. But, we knew this guy while the divorce was going on, and it was part of it. It wasn't all of it, but it was definitely part of it.
Yeah. And I would say the same thing. In my communications with the activists in the ET Let's Talk network around the world, during these last 10 years I've been doing this, of course, I have heard variations of the story, and it's not just a marital kind of bad ending where a divorce has happened, which was contributed to. I wouldn't say anyone has ever told me that the contact work was the primary cause, but it does contribute. So also other relationships, I mean, whether your mother, your father, or your siblings around you agree with what you're doing is huge. Especially a lot of people tell me when they've had encounters as children, from 5 years old, 10, 12, teenage years, dramatic ones, and yet no one around them will believe them or tells them and tells them to shut up. Or actively derides them.
They tell them it's just a dream, or you're imagining things, or
right.
they take a trip to the local shrink to find out what's wrong with Johnny, sort of thing.
And that has happened, and so people tell me that they learned to shut up, and in order to keep their sanity, and even as experiences continued, they kept them to themselves. And as a result, years later, when they find the ET Let's Talk network, they are one of the first things I'm asked all the time is there anybody in my city, who would like to form a group that I can talk to? I don't have anybody around me. I feel really lonely. I feel isolated and can't share this. And it's just wanting to come out because this is profound. A lot of times I'm able to connect them, and many times I'm not. Our movement is not in the millions. If it were, then probably every city in every country would have somebody that I could connect them with, but that's not the case yet. So I welcome them to put themselves on the ET Let's Talk member map there so that other people can visually see their location and their email address and then contact them. People want community. They want to be validated. They want someone close to tell them, I believe you. You're not crazy. You're okay. And let's talk about this further. And maybe let's do this together.
Yeah, it's not just family and friends, but it's also a work environment. I remember when I first started doing the work back in '92, I kept pretty quiet about it. And then gradually I started telling people what I was doing on some of my weekends off, or I'd have a regular schedule work in the ER, so sometimes I'd have days off in the middle of the week. And gradually I let quite a few people know the work that I was doing. And I was fortunate enough that it was a full partner at the Southern California Permanente Group. I had tenure, and I had been working there for almost 15 years when I started doing the contact work. And because we were a group practice, my colleagues could see all my charts. They knew that I was taking care of their patients well, because in the emergency room, people come in very sick, and I'd stabilize them. And as a physician, I had won the respect of my colleagues, so that when I went off on this unusual hobby, they knew that Joe Burkes may have had an unusual avocation, but when it came to doing the job, helping the patients, I was there for their patients. So I was lucky in that I got started in the contact network, not my first week on the job, but after 15 years. So that was fortunate. The nurses used to tease me, of course. Sometimes they'd ask me, Dr. Burkes, are you going out to chase UFOs? And I know I may have mentioned this before on the radio, but I love the story. And I would put on my best New York accent and say, you think that I'm chasing UFOs? Well, let me tell you something. They're chasing me. And they are chasing me. In other words, translation, non-New York accent. So there was basically a lot of fun give and take on the job, because the nurses were excited, and they wanted to hear about the stories, what was happening. The fact that I had two of my colleagues on the team protected me from what would have been, I think, more harsh comments from people who didn't understand or were frightened about the work we were doing. So I wanted just to add that. We have about another 12 minutes before we go to the break. I wanted to ask you if your contact work together is something that has been injurious to other parts of your life, like finances. Because when people start doing this work and getting so excited, often they neglect things like making money. I've known some people who are so excited about the CE-5 initiative that, or other groups too. When I remember a woman, when I told him about the exciting adventures of the Peruvian contact network called Rama, she wanted to leave her job, go to Peru, learn Spanish, and be a Rama activist. So this would have had a big impact on her finances. Do you know of people who have suffered financially because of this work?
Hollis, I'll let you take that.
I was going to say, just the one guy who got the divorce.
Well, yeah,
That's the only one.
That would be a big expense, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that had a downside.
That was pretty bad. Yeah.
We're getting some questions from the chat room, and one of which is we're asking Costa. His name is Martin, and he's from Passive Contact, one of our authors, and he wanted to know whether the telepathic contact, presumably with that orb, was a kind of channeling experience. Could you comment on whether Gloria had a channeling experience, or was it something else, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I thought it was a real merging. For me, channeling can, well, you know what? Here's the thing. If I throw the word channeling out there into a group of 10 people, I'm going to get 10 different definitions of it. So there's a bit of a real challenge here about what we mean by it. And sometimes I just like to stay away from that word and use other words, so that you don't get hung up on the word and instead can tune in on the experience of something. So in this case, what I would say is there was a merging. I truly believe there was a merging from another being with her, within her own space. And whether you want to call that channeling or not, kind of actually doesn't really matter. I don't want the label to get in the way.
I use the word communion type of experience, because it suggests something far more intimate. A channeling experience is often from a source that's unknown, and here you have these beings identifying themselves and then going directly into her being. So I think it's different from what most people will envision of a person channeling, either by speaking in the voice of a non-human entity that's
Hmm.
the source, or other types of automatic writing, which is a kind of channeling type experience. This is something far more intimate, and nevertheless, it provided very good confirmation that these beings were very interested in us, and perhaps they were scientists. And it's truly remarkable. There's another question that has coming from a person who identifies him or herself as neutron. And so, do you have any indications if the fact that some abductees remember being abducted and others don't is controlled by the entities, or just a random recollection? So they're asking about missing time, about problems with memory concerning contact experiences. Would you like to try to answer that, or shall I give it a try? Or
I think
Costa?
um, I'll give it a try and say that's got to. I truly believe that's got to be as individual as every encounter, and I'm not trying to dodge it by saying that. I've had missing time happen, and
So have
uh,
I.
yeah, and I can't explain that, whether it was another entity, something that happened in my brain, but I just know that it happened. It has stayed with me. And again, I think if you got 10 people in a room who'd had, and I don't like to use the word abduction, those are contact experiences of varying quality on a spectrum.
A
But if you got
CE4. A CE4
CE4s,
is a more
so
neutral way of
CE4s,
saying so-called abduction, a CE4.
okay, yeah, close encounter of the fourth kind. If you got 10 people who had a C4 and asked them for their definition of what happened, or the cause of it, again, I think you'd get 10 different answers. Uh, I'm I'm sure that ET intelligence is behind some of it. If they have the ability to enter into your state of being, or actually take you aboard a ship or something, then certainly they can tweak a lot of buttons around our energy fields and leave us with memories or take memories away. I don't doubt that's not present.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, every individual is different. Perhaps some individuals that they interact with are not so conducive to being dealt with in a certain way, and so they're able to recollect and
Hmm.
whatnot. Again, it can be very individual, and not having been a contactee of that dramatic kind of variety, I'm not pretending that I'm an expert in it. I often find myself listening more to people who've had those contacts so that I can learn from them how that has affected them and all
Yes,
the different kinds of things that happen. And
that's a very wise position, because you're not putting yourself forward as an expert, but as a fellow experiencer that's eager to learn. I think so often in this field, people, because first of all, it's a great mystery, and so there's a tremendous pressure on people to create certainty, a sense of security that they know what's going on. So they invest in one notion or other, and then tend to reject the contact experiences of others that don't match their individual perspective or contact experience. So being open, I think, is very healthy in the subject. And I know from my experience, I've had missing time twice. One of the missing time episodes was Joshua Tree National Monument. I was on Highway 63, 62, coming back from Desert Hot Springs towards Palm Springs. And I had a missing time of probably an hour and a half with a coworker. And several days later, he started having spontaneous recall of what he imagined was an onboard experience. I remember nothing. I haven't undergone hypnosis for a variety of reasons, although I am curious about it. And so some people are allowed to remember what they imagine are contact experiences on board craft, and others, like myself, don't remember a thing. And as you say, it's very individual, and we just have to keep an open mind. Hollis, do you have anything to add on the
Yeah.
question? Yeah, go ahead.
You framed that as people are allowed to remember or not. I think some of that locus of control is within oneself, within the experiencer's self. If it would be too scary for you to remember, you won't remember.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps a little
whether
bit.
anybody wants you to or not. Like, if you're scared, you won't remember. That's safer for you. And I'll offer you this: if you ever want to be regressed to see what you can remember, I'm happy to do that for you.
Oh, wow. I just got an offer. All right.
You know what? And as I heard you saying that before Hollis spoke up, Dr. Joe, I thought
Yeah.
to myself, Hollis should work with him, and there's no telepathy between myself and my wife, none whatsoever.
Yeah, really.
So,
and we should point out to people who are listening that we are not in the same room. We can't see each other, and the only way we can hear each other is the same way that you are hearing us now.
That's true. That's true. But Joe, that's an offer you can't refuse, and you'll be in good hands.
You're 250 miles from where I'm sitting now. If I drive all night, I should be there in the morning.
Okay.
just kidding.
We'll keep the coffee hot for you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I just wanted to remind our listening audience that we have two very special guests, Kosta Makreas and wife and fellow contact activist, Hollis Polk. And we're going to be going to a break in just a few minutes, but I encourage people in the chat room to continue discussing and send us some more questions if you have. And please stay tuned after the commercial interruption, and we can carry on with this discussion. I personally have been wary of hypnosis because nature abhors a vacuum. And when people are highly suggestible during the hypnosis process, they can confabulate, which is a fancy medical term for saying make things up. They can imagine what they think should have gone on, and then they, under hypnosis, not necessarily recall it, but give out to the hypnotherapist that imagined fantasy, and then their fantasies are reinforced by the hypnotherapist and by the UFO subculture to say, well, if you remembered it, it happened. And that is not always the case. So hypnosis is a double-edged sword. It's very good in certain therapeutic situations to allow people to overcome their fears and anxiety, but it's also a possible vehicle for confabulation, and having the hypnotherapist unfortunately guide or lead the hypnotic subject to a conclusion that didn't actually reflect what happened during the contact experience. So we're running out of time. So okay. Just be aware that we can continue this discussion later, but there's certainly several more topics. So let's go to the break now, and we'll be listening to some music. Well, we're back on the air. I want to thank those folks out there in Radioland for listening to Epic Voyages. My name is Dr. Joseph Burkes. I'm a medical physician, and we have two very special guests with us, a woman and man, husband and wife, fellow contact activists, a dynamic duo. That's right, Kosta Makreas and wife Hollis Polk. But we also have people out there who, all three of us, by the way, contributed to the book Paths to Contact, True Stories from the Contact Underground. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time just mentioning the book because Martin Chicoine, who is a contact worker from Canada, I believe he's part of Montreal CSETI, he sent us a message. And the book, Paths to Contact, published December 2012, has a collection of over 20 individuals who are in what I call the contact underground. It's a network of people who have recurrent sightings of UFOs, and they go out at night to use various modalities, thought projection. We use powerful lights in what hopefully are secure locations in an attempt to interact with with powerful lights, or perhaps some limited telepathic communications with the intelligence responsible for the flying saucer phenomena, presumably extraterrestrial in nature. So I want everyone out there to know that if they want to have a written record of the contact experiences of people like Costa, myself, or Hollis, you can go ahead and get the book, Paths to Contact, True Stories from the Contact Underground, and it's a very good investment. Jeff Becker was very kind to volunteer his time, and his wife is a professional editor. So the stories are well written, well edited, and I think very instructive of what is happening on a worldwide basis, and that is people are going out to make contact. When I was in the peace movement, we had a slogan. I was an activist in International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, and we went to the former Soviet Union to meet with Soviet doctors. And we had a message that questions of war and peace were so important, and we believed that they should not be left to the generals and the politicians. We engaged in what you would call citizens diplomacy, people-to-people diplomacy. And my feeling about the contact issue is that it's similar to the issue of world peace, and that is contact is too important to leave to the generals and politicians. And I think Costa may have coined the term people's disclosure, and I'd like to have him share his idea about it. But basically, I think the best disclosure of the UFO reality is not going to come from some authority figure, but when large numbers of people all over the planet have a chance to see UFOs and have limited interactions with them to show that whatever this phenomena is, it certainly looks relatively benign. And I wanted to know what you think, Costa and Hollis, about this concept of people-to-people's diplomacy.
Well, actually, I'm all over that. As part of the ETLetsTalk.com mission, this People's Disclosure Movement, which I founded a number of years ago, is very central and very powerful. You were very eloquent in what you were saying and the analogy that you were making to the peace movement with the contact movement, and I can add some things to that. And that is that when we at ETLetsTalk.com teach everyday people the simple steps to making contact, it's a very, I would like to call, revolutionary and evolutionary thing, because, as you were saying, it empowers people-to-people efforts to reveal the presence of our star visitors. We don't need the blessings or authorities of government or other institutions telling us what we saw, what we didn't see, move along, nothing to see here, and such, because we're revealing the truth to ourselves and informing and educating and activating each other. And that's what the People's Disclosure Movement is about within the ET Let's Talk larger mission. We have now, in this network, and there are others, 11,000 people in more than 100 countries who've been making contact for years and sharing their stories. That's what this movement is about.
Could you tell us about the operation of the monthly Skywatch that you do? Tell us a little bit more about how that works.
Sure. If the Global CE-5 initiative was founded by me in October of 2010, many people across the planet had heard about some of these techniques, but I saw an opportunity to organize them on social media, via email, etc., so that we could make a more regular, united, virtual experience out of this. And so since October 2010, we're now entering our 7th year. Every month, I have chosen a Saturday, which is different every month, because I choose a Saturday that is closest to the new moon, so that we have a dark sky, because people like to enjoy the sky and be able to see objects out there without the moon's light washing them out. But for a 24-hour period across the planet, I mobilize our entire ET Let's Talk network and others who want to join us to virtually join together in a common approach as members of the one humanity to ET intelligence. And I believe this amplifies our efforts. And ET certainly knows we're here, because I get reports back every month on the website, and that I share via email and on Facebook and other social media. I get reports back from our teams about telepathic contact they've made, on-the-ground contact. They've gotten videos, they've gotten pictures, and this has happened month after month, year after year during this effort. So we know we're being heard, we're being watched by ET, and ET is joyously interacting. Otherwise, they would have never showed up for any of us.
Could you share with us some of the more dramatic contact experiences that people have described? I'd like to hear from Hollis as well about some of her friends and contacts and their experiences. But share what you learned through the ET Let's Talk contact network.
Okay, well, I'll tell you one dramatic story. A group in an island nation that was part of the network a number of years ago told me that, and they actually had photographs, they had a low-flying ET craft come over to where they could see over their home, where they could see the circular shape, the lights, the structure. It wasn't just a far-off light in the sky. Yeah, light in the sky, which I still get excited about, as long as they're making erratic maneuvers from our point of view that our terrestrial planes cannot do. Then it's a good prospect that they're extraterrestrial in origin, or maybe even part of the secret government's
projects
and projects too. And that's a whole other story.
So this individual got a picture of the UFO above her home. Is that right? Or his home?
And it was a group. Yeah. So they got a low flying picture, and others have repeated that. This was just one instance, but again, they've had something what I call up close and personal that nobody could deny, and that just thrills everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how about you, Hollis? Can you think of not necessarily your contact experience, but stories you've heard from fellow activists that have impressed you?
Well, here's the thing. I am not the networker that Costa is. So the experiences that I can recount are all ones that either I have been part of and or people in our local group or groups we've been a part of have experienced. So, maybe with me, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite one, we had a friend, now, no longer in a physical body, who had quite clear contact with somebody she referred to as Father, who was from the Pleiades. And for Costa's birthday several years ago, she said, I asked Father to do something special for you. And of course, we have no idea what this is going to be. So we go up, because it happened that the night of contact, it just happened that it was Costa's birthday. So there were 17 of us up on a hilltop with a great, 360-degree view of the sky. And to the south of us, it was quite late, but to the south of us, and again, there were 17 of us there, and we all saw this, a very bright light appeared in the sky. There was no way that this was a star. It was much bigger than a star. It was not as big as the moon when it's full, but it was, a reasonable fraction of the size of the moon, very bright, stationary. And it powered up, it got a little brighter, and then it got dim, and then it moved off to the left for a little while, became stationary, got brighter again, dimmed down again, moved off to the left, stopped, brighter, dimmer, moved off to the left, brighter, dimmer, and that time it disappeared. But this whole thing took several minutes, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and we all saw it.
Mm-hmm. That is very dramatic, and it was, I guess, maybe a happy birthday present, perhaps. Yeah.
It was, yes. It was our friend's father coming to say happy birthday.
Yeah, and that was dramatic because she had been talking about very openly about her father and how he was here with other family and with a fleet and this kind of thing. So to have a promise like that made and then to experience this tied it all together. We lead very interesting lives, and people are free to think this might have been just a coincidence, but nonetheless, we saw something in the sky. We believe that the promise that that something special would happen, and that the fact that this happened in a very dramatic fashion, witnessed by multiple people, I believe all that was connected. And I expressed my gratitude.
We have some questions coming in from the chat room. Thank you. Marcus Schuster, I think he's from the Western New York CE-5 group. He writes, I have a question in regards to religion, spiritual aspects of contact experiences. if that's not enough, he also asks, in addition to the importance of Dr. Dr. Vallet's research and Mr. John Keel's research. Well, we could probably spend several programs just focusing on the religious, spiritual aspects, but I think this is very important because a lot of people out there approach the UFO phenomena as if it were a kind of engineering problem. I have friends in the Mutual UFO Network, and we have agreed to disagree. What are the important parameters? They are focused on citing reports, and within the Contact Underground, this network of experiencers that are going out into the field and willfully interacting with the phenomena, we're more interested in real-time communication. So I'd like to find out from first you, Hollis, how do you feel about the religious or spiritual aspects of contact?
Wow. Again, you could go on for hours. Mm-hmm. I think the shortest thing I can say is that I have a real strong suspicion that our extraterrestrial friends have been here since perhaps before humanity, and that many of the ancient religious texts contain, references to our star family.
Their presence.
Exactly. And because humanity, for whatever reason, has been programmed not to believe this, it has been cloaked in language that makes it seem as if they were, mystical angelic beings. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't also perhaps angelic beings. I don't know where extraterrestrials leave off and, angelic or archangelic, whatever beings begin. So
certainly they have been here for a long time, and you have the understanding that many of our so-called wisdom traditions may have involved contact with this intelligence, or some of what people describe as prophecy, or shall we say, being given spiritual guidance may have come from an extraterrestrial source. How about you, Kosta? What do you would like to share with us on the spiritual or religious aspects of the phenomena?
Well, for one thing, I agree with what Hollis has to say, that their presence in our history is certainly something that cannot be denied, and that, like Hollis, I do believe that they've had an impact through our mythologies and all that, and I believe that is still going on. And why are they here now is a question you could ask. I believe that we have, actually not believe, but in various ways, not only myself, but other people in the ET Let's Talk network who have talked to me about it, come back with a common message, and that is they love us. Now, I realize that that's not spiritual or religious in the way we think of, but for me, love should be the religion. Once you strip away labels, it's really all about relationship. What holds anything together, the universe. When we get messages from ET intelligence in these various different ways from many people over time, from many cultures, that express the word we're loved as humans despite our terrible faults, but also we're loved because of our incredible potential and our higher natures that are possible. I believe right now, and my spirituality is all around the fact that these civilizations, and many of them come from different places, are not just about the hardware, as much as I love that too, but they are spiritually evolved. Perhaps on their own planets, on their own worlds, they faced extinction like our Earth is now, and maybe they overcame it, maybe some didn't, but certainly ones that did overcome that and who evolved and went interstellar, discovered places like the Earth, and are now in our present time here to observe and to a certain degree try to help where our free will allows it, help us not make some of the mistakes of others and help us make the next transition to a global era of peace. And that to me shows love. That's spirituality. That's spiritual advancement without any kinds of labels. And let me just tell you one thing. One message that I personally received from ET Intelligence via telepathy was, hey, think of us not as gods. We don't come to you as that way now, but think of us as elder brothers, sisters, and cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after I got that message, might have been a week or two, because it was still on my mind. It was a powerful message that I really wrapped myself around, like, yeah, I like that. I like the idea of family. I was driving to meet Hollis, who was in another city, on a highway between our two cities, and I was going very fast, breaking the speed limit as I usually do in the left lane of. Obviously, this is a North American thing, so this is the fast lane. But I was kind of in a zone, just driving. Traffic was easy. And you know how sometimes you'll drive and then you come to about a half an hour later and you go, oh my God, I'm still on the road. I'm holding the steering wheel. Who the heck was driving this? Because, I was just zoned out. Well, I was in that kind of zone. But towards the end of it, I noticed that on my right in the lane, a semi-trailer truck passed me. They were going faster than I was. No big deal. Peripheral vision, he went past, followed by a second truck. And by now I was paying attention because I'd seen the first one, and I just glanced up, and as the second semi-trailer truck passes me, I see the rear of the trailer. And if you've ever seen a parked car in a lot anywhere that has been kind of dirty as an automobile, and someone has taken their finger and written in the dirt on the back windshield, wash me, great joke. Yeah. Well, in big block letters, in the same way on the back of this trailer truck as it's going by, but I'm still able to read it, big letters, not script, it said, ETs are family. And then zoomed out of sight. And I was stunned. It's like, okay, either I believe that at the last truck stop, the guy or woman driving this truck thought it would be a great joke to stop and write this on the back of their semi-trailer truck and mess with the mind of somebody like me or others on the road. Either I believe that, or I believe that what I heard a few weeks ago from my ET friends, We Are Family, has just been validated in a way I could not have imagined, but which is actually kind of funny. They've got a sense of humor. Let's get Kosta's attention. He's zoned out. I don't know how they did it, but there it was, and I cannot make this up. ETs are family. Like, where did that come from? Who has ever seen that? And I want to thank them for that. Got my
Right. So we've heard from two of my fellow contact activists in the Contact Underground, and certainly we have, without a doubt, very positive attitude towards contact. And the underlying theme is love, which is essentially a concept of oneness. And what UFO intelligence appears to be doing is promoting the idea of brotherhood and sisterhood made large. Now, this doesn't take into account some of the darker experiences that people have, which I should mention. There's a whole literature, and certainly if you read the statistical report from FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, and I just want to mention that the founder of FREE, Mr. Ray Hernandez, has agreed to be our guest next month. I think that's going to be this December 10th. I should say not December. It'll be November. Yeah, my November show will be speaking about their statistical study questionnaire, but about 2/3 or 3/4 of the people describe pretty much positive or overwhelmingly positive experiences. But still, there are a large number of people who are frightened, who call their experiences abductions, which I don't particularly like that term, but that if the ETs are promoting love, it's a tough kind of love. It shakes people up a lot. And in the writings of a former colleague of mine, John Mack, Dr. Mack, who passed away several years ago, he realized that even the negative contact experiences are a door to a different kind of reality where there is the possibility of spiritual growth. And what these beings are doing and what this intelligence is doing is shattering our existing paradigm and making us look for something bigger, broader, more universal, and something that can unite people, not only on this planet, perhaps, but to other intelligences. And I would come from a very secular background. And in fact, although I'm Jewish, I never had the traditional Jewish upbringing. I was raised by a left-wing, a Marxist, and I never really had any religious training whatsoever. But once I joined the Contact Network, I realized that the big lack in my life, which was spirituality, was something that could be satisfied not necessarily by a traditional spiritual program, but by the kind of new age spiritual program that I embraced through the Contact Network. And for me, when I joined the Contact Network, I was advised to read a book by another physician called Larry Delsey, M.D. He wrote a book called Recovering the Soul, in which he reported on the ways in which prayer has been a vehicle for healing. And he gave instructions as to how you can pray. And so for the first time, I decided I would pray. I never prayed before in my life, or maybe as a child. I said some prayers because I saw it on television, but certainly didn't get any reinforcement from home. So I decided I would pray for someone. My wife was having a hard time supporting a girlfriend of hers who was also married to a physician, and there was marital problems and infidelity and lots of pain. And my wife would be on the phone with her friend for 45 minutes a day and trying to reassure her. So I decided I would pray for her friend, Stephanie. So for a week, I followed the instructions of my fellow colleague, Dr. Larry Delsey. I went into meditation. I said, do the right thing, do what is natural. For Stephanie, thy will be done. And I visualized her. About a week into this exercise, which I did every day, my wife said that she got a strange report from Stephanie. She said, and of course my wife didn't share my contact experience or my prayer or everything else because she was very frightened about the changes that I was going through. So when Stephanie reported back to my wife that she was feeling so much better, so much peaceful, and these were her very words, it was as if someone was quietly praying for me. Wow. Yeah. The first time in my life I decided to pray for someone, and there was some healing or comfort. So for me, I have a great sense of gratitude to the Contact Network, to all my fellow activists for helping me down a path which may not be a traditional spirituality, but certainly has filled me with delight about experiencing brotherhood and sisterhood made large, and what I now understand can be called divine oneness. So that's somewhat of a detailed explanation, but I haven't shared that on the radio yet, and I wanted to reinforce that. We have another question. This is from someone from the chat room, Knowing. Dr. Burkes, does Costa definitely believe that UFOs are alien life from another planet, or does he believe it could be a local or terrestrial paraphysical intelligence that may be indigenous to Earth? And that sort of dovetails with a question put forward by Marcus Schuster, asking about, second part of the question was about the importance of Dr. Vallée or John Keel's research. So why don't you talk about the possibilities, and let's hear from our resident psychic, Hollis, as well, whether we are interacting with ETs or could it be some terrestrial paraphysical intelligence. Hollis?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, of course it could be terrestrial, and I have to allow for the possibility that some of this stuff at this date, maybe not 20 or 30 years ago, but maybe, some of it may be man-made. I really don't know what's what. I mean, when you come across something communicating with you, it's pretty clear if it is non-human intelligence. But if you just see a craft in the sky, you don't know what that is. It's not standard aircraft, because we all know what those look like. We all know what nav lights look like. But
Sure.
beyond that, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to leave open all possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
When I have contact, telepathic contact, again, I don't know where any kind of high frequency being begins and ends.
Okay, so we should keep an open mind, appear to be UFO intelligence, or if there's some unpleasant interactions, and this is something that I've wondered about, whether some of these so-called abductions could be beings that, well, historically, we've always, in every culture, we've found entities that appear as tricksters, as shapeshifters, as perhaps that these beings from maybe an astral hell, if such a place exists, are carrying out what you might describe as a false flag operation, scaring the hell out of people and claiming that they're extraterrestrial when they're indeed not. So, these are the possibilities. How would you like to answer that question from A Knowing, from the chat room? Costa?
Yes, I believe that both the divide between is it extraterrestrial or terrestrial is an artificial one. I believe life is continuous and present everywhere, on Earth, in the dimensions around Earth, in space. To me, it's a huge continuum. So do I believe that what we so-called UFOs come from other physical planets in our physical 3D universe? Sure, I do. Do I believe that there might be astral entities, local dimensional entities, as well as human beings, experimenting with psychic powers, doing the trickster kinds of things that you mentioned, and maybe more destructive things? Yes, I think it's all of the above. We are in quite a mixture here, quite a soup of consciousness, and beings at all levels of spiritual development are active around us and everywhere. What we need to learn to be is discerning, I believe, and that is by keeping ourselves intact, keeping a high vibration, working with other people to develop love and goodwill between us and in our interactions with what we want to attract. That is our greatest power, our greatest protection, and our greatest promise. And that's what I want to emphasize at ET Let's Talk community, because our contact method at its basis involves a goodwill, open heart, loving vibration, which will serve to protect us against any evildoers, whether they're man-made or other dimensional, astral hells, whatever, but in a positive way. And let's stay tuned to the positive here.
Mm-hmm.
Will be attractors and will give out our signature of love to the higher intelligence, who I think far outnumber any of those who are malevolent, wherever they're located, off world or on world.
So you're suggesting that like attracts like.
Yes.
So if you go out with a message of oneness, of projecting positive emotion, love, brotherhood, sisterhood made large, that you're likely or more likely to attract entities that, for want of a better term, vibrate at similar frequencies or have the same quote energy. And this is a problem because it's a big universe, and the spiritual literature talks about the existence of darker realms, other dimensions. I threw out the word astral hell. And so there are malignant intelligence perhaps as well, if one is fearful, if one is angry. And this is something we see in our contact work, that if we have a member of our team who is very frightened or has a secret agenda, I think I mentioned this in the past, that they say want to contact only the good guys, very dualistic, like they've already decided, these misguided people, that the grays are all evil, and they want to meet people look like the so-called Pleiadians, the Nordic types. If you have these mixed agendas, if you have anger towards one perhaps class of extraterrestrials, the presence of those negative emotions within the contact team is poison. It really does prevent any kind of meaningful encounter to occur. And when those people come forward and say, I've had these issues, and often they're encouraged not to be part of the group anymore, but to work on themselves and try to overcome their anger or their fear. Once those people leave the group, the level of contact increases. I think the idea of like attracting like plays a role in our contact work. Do you agree?
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even in our normal human interactions in our everyday world and lives, I mean, isn't it obvious that when you can get a group of people together that, and I'm not talking about the Nazi mentality, which is the jackboot thing of everybody thinking alike in a destructive way, but generally people who are in harmony with each other, they don't have to have the exact same thoughts, but at least the vibrations and the values are this openness, this goodwill, this love. Look what human groups can accomplish when they cooperate and work in this way versus groups where there's political and Joe, Dr. Joe, you've been part of political groups as I have, where egos get in the way and different agendas arise. People fight within each other, and then the house becomes divided and the house of cards then falls. So again, here's the example of what happens in our human world. In our extracosmic world, as we're trying to reach out to the larger universe and other intelligences there, why wouldn't the same principles of cooperation versus disharmony and negativity and fear still not be operating? I believe that the universe reflects, the macrocosm reflects our microcosm reflects the macrocosm, or maybe the other way around. Which came first, the microcosm or the macrocosm? I don't know.
The chicken or the egg story, huh?
The chicken or the egg story.
Okay, well, we've covered that question a little bit, although I did not talk about Dr. Vallée and John Keel's research. I have discussed this issue in terms of the enormous contribution of both of these authors. John Keel is no longer with us. He passed away several years ago. Dr. Vallée he's in his 70s, but still quite active in terms of the scientific field and parapsychology, although in 1995, he pretty much left the UFO research field because of a number of major issues that he had with the UFO subculture. He felt that it was no longer possible for him to do meaningful scientific research in the field. And he pretty much came with the conclusion that John Keel had, and that was that ufology often appears as if it's a battleground between people arguing over their various belief systems. And this is a point that John Keel made, and I think it's a very apt one, and that is once a person decides they know what's going on or they've had a contact experience, unfortunately the tendency exists to reject any other claim or any other contact experience that doesn't coincide with their personal view. And they kind of fall in love with their explanation and become very close-minded, and we're kind of blinders. So I think keeping an open mind is always important, and to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. I personally don't know whether the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon is truly extraterrestrial or in nature. I question it for a variety of reasons that I've explained in previous shows. Nevertheless, what way can we best find out who they are? Go out and meet them, interact, engage with them, and try to do so in the comfort and with the reinforcement and support of your fellow human. This is very basic. And if there are some ET groups that don't have our best intent, well, we should want to meet them too. Because after all, the United States and the former Soviet Union engaged in arms control negotiations for decades, something that we did not do with our allies. But that dialogue with Russia, with the Soviet Union, was very important in limiting the nuclear arms race and in preventing accidental nuclear war. and the cooperation between the United States and the Soviet Union. The dialogue went on for years. So I would say that if there are some groups out there that don't have good intent, well, we need to engage at some point with them, maybe not now, but at some point, to negotiate a peaceful resolution, whatever differences we have. So, that's all I want to share with about Dr. Vallet's work. I think in a later show we'll be getting more into that. We're now coming to the last segment of our show. I have some little bit of, shall we say, housekeeping, and that is for those people tuning in for the first time. You're listening to Epic Voyages, and we're on the Inception radio network, and you can reach us if you're not listening live on the radio. You can listen us to by going to inceptionradionetwork.com. We're on every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I encourage people to find out more about EPIC, which is the Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council. You can check out Epic Voyagers on Facebook. Don't forget our website, epicvoyages.com. And there's also Epic Voyagers YouTube channel. IRN can also be heard on television sets via Roku TV setup media player. You can download the IRN app on your Android, iPhone, and BlackBerry, or through the syndicated streaming partners of BlackBerry and Amazon smartphones like TuneIn, iTunes, and Google Play Music. There's also opportunities to listen through Stitcher Radio's Vehicle Dashboard app. And even if power goes out, you can still listen through the old-fashioned phone lines by dialing 401-267-8300. That's 401-267-8300. Please listen to shows that are in our archived irnshows.com. There's hundreds of past Epic shows you can listen to. And we still have about a quarter of an hour left, and the chat room is open, and you can reach that by going to irnchat.com. irnchat.com. And I see a question coming in from Max, who says, so could it be the ETs are just a more advanced form of ourselves? This sort of coincides with the notion that they might be future versions of ourselves, and what we are calling extraterrestrial are really time travelers. Max went on to say, how can we ever have positive and peaceful communication with those off Earth? Well, I'm not sure what that question means, because we've been describing it as best we can about how we can have positive and peaceful interactions. But the first question that Max poses is, could it be that the ETs are just a more advanced form of ourselves? How would you answer that, Costa?
Well, I'd like to defer to Hollis. I've been doing a lot of talking, and then I can add my 2 cents worth too.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, some of them certainly could be. The ones who look human, but I have seen more clairvoyantly than anything else beings that look distinctly non-human. And I kind of doubt that we are going to morph into something that has, a covering of feathers.
Right, the wide range of phenotypes, which is the fancy two-bit medical term for classification on the basis of appearance. The large number of phenotypes, the multitude of different beings that contact experiencers describe, would not be consistent with the intelligence behind the phenomena being exclusively future versions of ourselves. So
exactly.
That's a very good point to make. And Costa, did we hear from you on this subject?
Yes, and here I agree with Hollis that certainly a time-traveling option is viable in my mind and probably true, but I don't think it's 100% of the explanation. Listen, this is a huge, unimaginably huge universe. I mean, even as you listen to standard science, exoplanets are being discovered weekly. There are probably now hundreds of them, and as we bring out and put up more powerful and newer telescopes. There's one going up next year. I forgot the name of it, but our colleague and friend Danny Sheehan often talks about it. I think it's the Webb. But anyway, as our telescopes get better, more refined, more powerful, we're discovering more planets. The important thing to understand here is that life, the existence of life, is more of a probability than not the existence. And again, our standard science is discovering this now. So hence, there must be untold numbers of races out there, and many of them possibly eons or millions of years, let's say, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years older than our civilizations here, who have discovered the kinds of physics that we soon will discover, but that can bring them here, and who've been visiting in our historical past. So what I'm trying to say is this life is everywhere. I think it's much more voluminous than any of us can even imagine. I mean, who can get their mind around what a light year is? Have you thought about that? 186,000 miles a second for a year. And that's one light year. Our telescopes can see, I believe, 1 billion light years into the past. It's impossible for the normal human mind to understand really how big this universe is, and that we should not try to limit what is out there or what is even on Earth in our history.
We have about 12 minutes left for the show. I'd like to get to one or two more questions from the chat room. And I want to thank all the people in the chat room, as well as our producer, Mr. Joe Champion, for putting this thing together. And of course, Mr. Ken Cherry, who invited me to be your guest host for this and previous shows as well. So the question is coming from Jason Smith. And if I were an evil alien and noticed the signal of love, I would probably attempt to stop that. So you think it's possible to attract evil aliens, even though that was not your intentions? Let's ask Hollis about that. Is it possible to attract evil aliens, even though that was not your intention?
I suppose. I've never really thought about it. I do know it is also possible to put up energetic protections that would presumably help avoid that.
And I think this
but
is
I don't know for sure.
This is a very important point, because when I worked with Rama on several occasions, I went out to their research site at Shasta, and a good part of the contact protocols that they follow are protective, where they visualize white light surrounding all of the members of the team and asking that we are protected and that we only attract beings and intelligences that are vibrating on a peaceful frequency. So, I think, how about you, Costa? Would you want to add something as well?
Yes, I do want to add something. Now, I want to introduce the notion here of two things. One is attract, and one is the ability to affect. Yes, any evil alien or any kind of being, dimensional or otherwise, can see a light, can see maybe or detect the vibration of a group that is putting out love. But there's a difference between detecting it and then being able to do something about it, trying to harm the source where that is coming from. And that is why I want to mention that I admire the protocols of Rama, who I believe recognize what it is I'm talking about here, which is the fact that they can protect themselves. It doesn't mean that they may not get noticed, because, when you shine a light, the light is there. If you have sensory capability, you're going to see it. Now, if you have evil intentions and then you try to attack it, you got another thing coming, because it just may be stronger than you are. It just may be a higher vibration and of a strength that is superior to anything you can throw at it. And I believe that that is the case, especially since conscious beings are making the effort and an attempt to build their shield. They're just not passive about it, but they're being very active to build this light, to use love and the power behind it. Right. That will protect them. It may not keep them.
And I think the protection is not just psychic. It can be very practical. I believe on several shows past, I described how and while I was driving not far from where you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was driving along a mountain road at twilight. It was very circuitous route. The highway clung to a rock face, and on the other side of the road, which was only 2 lanes, was a precipitous drop of over 100 feet. And my coworker and I were looking for, well, something that contact activists do. We were looking for a landing site to use with a very high-powered Rama activist who had been offered an actual onboard experience. So we had this heavy hitter, as you might imagine, and to use a baseball term, who was working with us, and we wanted to find a good location to perhaps have I know this sounds pretty far out, but a landing and, if possible, a boarding. Well, we were driving along this road, and my coworker, who said, "Oh my gosh, we've got to get off the road now," and I started feeling very uneasy as well. It turns out that we were able to pull to the side of the road, and just a minute after we found this very narrow shoulder up against the rock face, 2 testosterone toxic young men driving muscle cars were drag racing down the mountain at 40 to 60 miles an hour on a road that was designated 25 miles only. And we would have been killed if she had not gotten this telepathic override. So I think that protection is there, but it's not only protection. In the minutes that remain, I want you to share with us, Costa, about healing, because this is something that if the extraterrestrials are on our side, then one way of showing that is to carry out healing. Do you think you could share with us what happened with your asthma and how it was alleviated, and you feel it might be related to your contact work?
Oh, absolutely. I was encouraged by a friend who had ET connections who were focused on healing. I was encouraged to make connections to these particular entities and to ask for a healing of asthma. Now, I had that pretty severely as a child, and then it had gone away, as it often does, but then reemerged in adulthood. So it was really up and present for me. It's like, oh my God, here it is back again. This is not going to be fun. I thought we were done with this, right?
You had pretty severe symptoms. You had to use your inhaler before you exercise. Is that correct?
Right.
And you had to wake up frequently at night to use the inhaler because of difficulty as well.
And eventually, through exercises and connections with ET, I was able to function more or less, more like a normal human being without the aid of the medicines to a large degree. Now, I want to add along the healing story here something even more up to date. One of the things that we do at etletstalk.com is we sponsor ET contact retreats. This past summer, for example, we went back to Mount Shasta. We had about 40 people, and we were making contact over the course of 5 days and nights. Quite unexpectedly, as we made contact in our large circle, under the stars, I would say that I believe at least 2, maybe 3 people reported to us after the fact, when we did our afternoon sessions of debriefing, reported that they had received healings. So it wasn't just about us seeing the lights in the sky, et cetera, which did happen, but unexpectedly some chronic condition, and they didn't name them. Often people don't want to share that in a large group, but they were very adamant and grateful that ET had come to them in some fashion, and it was very deliberate, so that this chronic condition had been removed. And again, we heard from 2 or 3 different people, none of whom, in these retreats, many of the people don't know each other. They're meeting for the first time for 5 days, so they weren't like part of the same group or working on the same kind of project to heal each other or anything. No, these were individuals not so much connected who came forward and said, "This happened to me. I am much better now. This was unexpected."
When are you having your next ET Let's Talk outing?
We're having. I'm hoping to organize 3 next year. Next June in Mount Shasta, and 1 in Bloomington, Indiana. We're shooting for in September, and then Joshua Tree in Southern California in October. I will be putting out the word to the community starting in January, and on the website on etletstalk.com with more details about them, so that people can join up.
And
And
could
I
you
invite
repeat?
people to-
Could you repeat the contact information for ET Let's Talk?
Yes, it's the etletstalk.com website. Our membership is free, and what we offer there are the member map where you can place your location and find other people around you. We have the ET contact retreats. We have free webinars with our friend and esteemed colleague, Daniel Sheehan, as well as a community there where you can connect with other people and share your pictures, your videos, your discussions, have questions, have answers, and find community and bonding and a sympathetic ear to your experiences.
You're on
So
Facebook as well, correct?
Right. On the name is kind of long. People may not remember it, but I would say come to the website etletstalk.com, and that'll get you started. It'll get you on the mailing list, and you'll receive all kinds of announcements from me about our monthly global CE-5 initiatives that I mentioned before, as well as the contact retreats and the free webinars, etc. So we think we offer a lot of helpful things to the community, and we're very appreciative to all the people who have shown up over the years, who have done the work, who have shared with us, who've given us encouragement and met with each other and encouraged each other. So it's been a great thing, and we're going to keep expanding.
We have just 2 minutes left, so before we say goodbye, I'd like to remind the audience that if you enjoyed listening to our show or found these topics as fascinating as family and friends tell us they are, I encourage you to get the book, Paths to Contact. It's edited by our friend Jeff Becker, who also has his contact experience, and over 20 individuals like myself, Costa and Hollis. Our story is told in this book. It's over 400 pages long and will provide you with lots of information and hopefully inspiration about the work of going out and engaging the intelligence responsible for the UFO phenomena. It's available from Amazon.com, published in December of 2012. It should be added to everyone's library. We don't get any money from this. However, all proceeds are being used for a good cause to help sponsor the work of Paths to Contact and to promote the book and the stories that are shared. I have the first chapter. It's 50 pages. And I was very pleased to see it go into publication and encourage people out there to get a hold of a copy and definitely consider doing the work that we are doing in terms of human-initiated, human-empowered contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. So we're now coming to the end of our show. I want to thank our guests, Hollis Polk, psychic, hypnotherapist, and well, how can I say it? But just this great all-around gal, and her husband Costa. my friend.
Some guy she married.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to be saying goodbye. Thank you, Kosta Makreas, for being on our show, and please stay tuned to Epic Voyages that comes back every Monday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we're also available as podcasts, which you can listen to a week to 10 days after our show is aired. So this is the end, and once again, keep looking up, because you never know what might appear, maybe a UFO. Thank you and good night.
Again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger.